My topic for this project is the effects of childhood abuse that spans the course of the victim's life. Trauma, especially on an innocent child, will always have some sort of lasting mark. So I'll be explaining to you what exactly these marks are, ranging from the mental to the physical. First off, let me explain as to why this is an important topic to talk about. As you'll see throughout this presentation, child abuse comes in many shapes and forms, and the effects result in a whole well of problems. A lot of people don't realize how often this can occur. As stated in the Neglect of Child Neglect, the overall estimated prevalence was 163 out of 1,000 for physical neglect and 184 out of 1,000 for emotional neglect. Now, this is just neglect. Imagine how much higher those numbers would be if we included other forms of abuse. This means that there's a lot of abused children out there growing up and confused about where to go in life and how to manage their trauma. And the fact that it isn't talked about more is one of the things that keeps the cycle continuing in families and communities. Some examples of the lasting effects are anxiety, depression, declining physical health, relationship and trust issues, and in some cases, the victim becoming the abuser themselves. Now, let's start with the most obvious long-term implication of childhood abuse. It can cause many mental health issues. For example, if a child is sexually or physically abused, they will likely develop some form of anxiety disorder, such as PTSD, and then they can also develop depression. Depression can lead to suicidal thoughts and behaviors if left untreated. One of the worst side effects of childhood abuse is the triggers. Now, I'm not talking about an SJW getting mad because someone posted something on Tumblr they disagree with, but a trigger is physical and emotional sensations caused by an event that triggers a flashback. A single trigger can have effects lasting for weeks, months, and even years afterwards. Another example is if the parent psychologically and emotionally abuses their children. In that case, it can lead to feelings of unworthiness and tension in the household. Self-confidence can also take a major hit, as explained by this quote here. If the attitudes of parents received by children in the form of violence, such as hitting, scolding, cursing, and ignoring, the confidence owned by children will be low. This, paired with no knowledge of healthy coping strategies or outside support, can lead the child down a very difficult path. The next major point I want to get to may come as a surprise to many people. Abuse suffered during childhood can have many negative consequences on the physical body. Now, how exactly does this come about? In Dr. Nadine Harris's TED Talk, she describes how a study done on about 12,000 adults made some mind-blowing discoveries. Researchers measured the participants' ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. Those experiences included the divorce of their parents, abuse, neglect, and others. It was found that the more ACEs individuals had, the worse their health was as an adult. In a study done on long-term effects of childhood abuse on alcohol intake, it was found that women with documented histories of child abuse reported higher rates of drinking. But when parental alcohol and drug problems were factored out of the equation, there wasn't a significant effect. So the main factor here is the influence of the parents' coping mechanisms. But going back to Dr. Harris's TED Talk, this study doesn't just highlight that individuals with bad childhoods smoke and drink more, but it also entailed the damage constant high stress does to the body and the brain. For example, when fight or flight kicks in and your adrenaline starts going, that's great if you're in a forest with a bear. But the problem is what happens when that bear comes home every night, and the system is activated over and over again. It goes from being adaptive and life-saving to being health-damaging. So if a child is constantly afraid of this metaphorical bear, what will their relationship be like with that bear? How will the child develop new relationships when they fear running into another bear? My third point is that childhood abuse doesn't just affect the victim, but it will also affect their relationships and their loved ones. We see this a lot when it comes to trust, especially when the victim has encountered unbelief or no support concerning their story. It can also cause the victim to hide what they went through, allowing the open wounds of the abuse to grow infected. Childhood sexual abuse typically comes with a deeper level of relationship issues for the survivor. In a lot of cases, love was shown to them through sex, touching, or imagery. Going through life with this type of mindset can cause the victim to seek out many sexual relationships early on and then be more vulnerable to more sexual misconduct later in life. In a research study done in 2015, researchers discovered that adolescent mothers had high rates of both alleged and substantiated maltreatment reports. More studies showed that a range of childhood adversities significantly contributed to the risk of teen pregnancy, abortion, and rapid repeat pregnancy. Also, males with adverse childhood experiences were more likely to father children born to teenage mothers. In these unfortunate cases, the cycle of abuse rarely has time to fully heal, thus meaning the cycle will continue even sooner. This brings me to my last point. How does childhood abuse continue and cycle through the generations? Because it's hidden. Because there's a stigma around the victims. It's a topic that is usually swept underneath the rug and suppressed. But like a pressure cooker with a rising temperature, if you improperly remove the lid, it's gonna explode. That's why it's important to release the steam before opening the lid. And by this, I mean the victim should seek out support through therapists and support groups. It's important for them to know that they're not alone and that there's people out there who genuinely love them and support them. In my personal opinion, when it comes to childhood abuse and healing the wounds caused by evil people, the best option is to raise awareness, provide good support and encouragement for the victims, and to make sure the abusers are never able to do it again. I chose this format for my project because I love both visuals and writing. So PowerPoint offers a creative way of appealing to both ways I can best present the topic. Not only that, but it gives me a lot of creative flexibility. I can use pictures to get my message across, as well as fluctuations in my voice and tone to emphasize important points.